Today I'm going to do a little video that is going over how to create axonometric drawings similar to the one that you're seeing on the screen now, which is by Pedro Pitarch, who has a lot of beautiful and really densely layered and informative work that employs all really similar styles, which is kind of this line drawing with heavy black poche and like these other kind of shading layers that keep the drawing really simple but are able to capture a lot of different types of information. And so I used this kind of drawing style in my Core 2 studio to do the axon drawing that showed the different ways that the school was being used in this case. And so the kind of general technique that I've been using to create a drawing like this, or to create a drawing like this, is to pretty much do all of the line work in Rhino, um, and pair that with different display modes in your layout view, to then be able to edit it further in Photoshop. And so I'm going to take you through like a general kind of technique to get to a final drawing in just a few like pretty simple steps. And so for your guys' case, it'll be a 30 by 30 drawing of the precedent of your choosing. But in this case, we're just going to go over like the steps that I took to make this drawing and then to export it. And so if you guys haven't used layouts in Rhino before, it's a really like nice way to organize your drawing to like kind of have both a 2D and a 3D version of the drawing. And so what I mean by that is you would make the layout. In this case, it's a 36 by 48 layout, and you kind of like want to get to the scale that you want in the axon. I guess the scale is a little less important, but for plan and section, to get to the scale you want and then to lock the viewport so it doesn't move. Once you're here, an easy way to that if you want to get out like drawings a little quicker, I uploaded a bunch of these display modes to the Google Drive, and so you can find them under Resources, Rhino INI files. And the ones that we're going to be looking at and using today are the pen display modes. So I have some that's without shadows, only lines, some that's shadow and line, and one that's shadows only. And then we're going to be pairing that with the normals and like the layer ID display modes to create those other layers that you see in the axon drawing. And so if I were to start from scratch, what you would want to do is like make 2D all of this 3D information. And so I'm just going to make 2D one piece of it. But so this is after you've set up your layout and you've specified the size of the layout and everything. You're going to want to make 2D this and make sure that the viewport rectangle is checked. Once you do that, it's going to create in 2D all of your information here, and it will already have that bounding box. So obviously I've done this already, and then I had all this context in 3D as well, and so I did like kind of two different make 2Ds of the building itself and then the context. And then from here, I was using different hatches to like layer the 2D information and cleaning it up. And then I will say you can do like a drawing that's similar to the Pedro Pitarch drawing, the axon drawing, something like this that me and my friend Omer did last year. You can do that with just the pen display modes, and I'll show you that really quickly. Like say you're using something like the pen display mode with lines and shadows. It's already like pretty close to that point, and you can like just print from here. It just you don't have as much control over the like line work, the textures on the surfaces of each of these the textures on the surfaces of the building, etc. It just gives you a little less control, but you can get a similar kind of drawing out if you pair something like this with then if you print out something that's just the shadows, and then you export that to, or you place that into Photoshop, and you're already able to start to play around with like a final drawing in a really streamlined way. But I'm gonna go over like this kind of more in depth way of that I created this drawing. And so, like I said, you're here. It doesn't matter what display mode you're in, but let's just say that we're in like a layer ID display mode. So you make 2D all this. You have all that information in your top view here with the bounding box here. All of this information in the 2D space is a 1-to-1 scale, whereas the information here is obviously at the scale view that fits into what you need it to be. And so I did the steps. I like hatched all the textures on, like whether it be wood or this texture. And so from here, what you would do is select everything to print it out. And with this, you want to like go to Window and then set the window that you want to print at, and you'll see like these like lines. It looks like it's gonna print out like beyond it, but it just prints out within the lines. And so yeah, so you'll choose the size first, and so in the case that that for this first part of the semester it'll be 30 by 30, but here it's 36 by 48. And then what's important here is that um, you want to have like all of the lines coming out as like close to the final line weight as possible, and so this is where you have to do a little bit of trial and error because the default line weight, which is shown here, um, is going to be different depending on like you're going to want to change it depending on the size of the paper that you are printing out. So with this, I'm doing it at 0.25 because I've kind of did a couple tests and know that the default line weight looks good there. Um, and then what's nice about working in 2D is that you have opportunities to create like outlines, and so those outlines they can have a thicker line weight. And so what you'll see is that like this is on a certain, and there's many ways to like organize this stuff. You can do it through your layers, or you can set the line weights individually. But what I found is like with like a drawing like this, it's nice to kind of have three general line weights or two like default line weight and then a thicker line weight, and then like the context here is gray, and so it like there's like these kind of different layers, and I'm sure it's all stuff that like is intuitive to you, and like that's I think what's nice about this method is that it gives you a lot of control over what you're emphasizing through 2D, through the 2D space and through your 3D information in Rhino. And so say I went through this, I went through the process of printing it out. I figured out the line weights that work for me. And then you're going to want to uncheck the background color because otherwise it'll show up as the background color of your Rhino space. And then one other thing that you can do is to make the bounding lines, make that print with no print. And so when you print it out, you're not going to have like a kind of border. And so say I printed that out, and then on one last thing is like with the 2D line work, you can export it as a vector. It saves a lot of space with this layer, and then it will also allow you to go into Illustrator if you like to do your line weight stuff in Illustrator, then you can do it this way. And so here I've already printed it out, and I printed it out as Axon DWG baselines, and so that's kind of like the precedent that I'm setting for like the naming. So let's say I printed that out. I would then go to here and then open it up with Photoshop. And so I've already opened it up, and this is what I have just from the initial printout. And so as you can see, like it's already quite clean, and a lot of like the work that needs to be done, like in terms of uh, the actual information of the drawing, is already done. And so I don't really have to deal with that in other programs. You just deal with that in Rhino. And as you can see, like in this drawing, there's a nice kind of outline of the building that we're looking at, and then the context is much lighter of a line weight. And I think that I set the line weight context, the line weight of the context, to even thinner than the default, and that can happen through layers, like I said, or we can just use a gray color. Anyways, so once you have that printed out, that will be the base of your drawing, um, and then right? What I then do is to then print out like the different display modes that you can then use to either manipulate or layer onto the final drawing. So here, this is a layer ID display mode, and so that's nice. Like when you want to like say for example, highlight a certain aspect of the building, um, and then the other important ones that I use for this kind of drawing style is a shadows only layer. And then one quick note is you see like you'll see in like the display names, the names of the display modes, they have this X, Y, Z. And that like is a little confusing at first, like what that relates to. And so what that is in these display modes, the shadow is correspondent to the lighting in the display mode, and so here in this one it is and I don't actually know, like I don't have like a good grasp on like what exactly how the kind of numbers correlate to where the shadows go, and so I think what I did was for this, like I have like a few different versions of this same display mode with different lighting settings, and what you get is just like these different shadows, and so you can kind of use that to like either tell a story of like the time of day or just another layer of information. And so as you can see, like these are all like different shadow modes, and so let's just so I printed out the shadows only from this display mode, but let's try. I'll do I'll print out another one of these so we can see like in Rhino how you can like use this to like change like the different aspects of the drawing. So when we're printing from here, it's the same as when you print from the drawing space, and you typically want to just for all the display mode layers, I usually just do it as a raster output, and if you need to save space, if you do it like 300 dots per inch, that is like perfectly fine. And here, if we're just going through, so there's no lines, so that kind of setting doesn't really matter. And then if you let me see if you set the background color, is it going to be? I think in the layout view, when you set the background color, it stays white. So that's like a nice thing to know. And so let's just say I'll print this out as Axon DWG Shadows 2. And then, so let's go back to Photoshop really quickly. Now that I have this base drawing, I'm going to add different layers of information. And so let's start with just like, say I brought in the normals for this. And what's nice is like, when you're working in this method, everything lines up. So once you have this, say we want to shade one side, like one kind of face of the building, because it corresponds to a sort of story that we're telling about it. we can like quick select all of the magenta here, and then create a color fill. Um, so this can be, and like there's just a lot of room for creativity. Like this drawing can really be however you want it to like. I just feel like what I like about this technique is that it offers a lot of flexibility and it's like very streamlined compared to um, say doing this like through Illustrator only or like having to jump back and forth through different programs. Um, then we'll put in like the two shadow layers. So this is the shadow layer I just did. I'll turn this into like a linear burn or like some other overlay. There's you can play around. Um, Another option that we could do if we wanted like really dark like post-shade shadows is to um, use the like color select and then do something like that. Um, yeah, and so you're already seeing like from Rhino with just I think a lot of the work obviously comes like into play when you're drawing the scene and like adding all the skill figures and adding whatever informational layers you want to add. But then once you're here, it's really like quite streamlined. Um, so from this, I could just export as a PDF. And then one thing I'll say is like when you're working in this method, it's pretty important to like have good layer management in Photoshop. And so what I like to do is like have all of the like base informational layers be in one group. Um, just like folder out the other information accordingly. Um, and that is kind of like the bulk of the stuff that I wanted to talk about. Just going through that general technique. And of course, there's like a lot of different. There's a lot more here in terms of like a workflow when you're actually drawing out the stuff once it's in 2D. There's like cleanup that you need to do from the make 2D, which sometimes can take a lot of time. But um, I think in general, it's like you can kind of see where this workflow could lead to drawing similar to this. Like say you had like the topography in 3D already, and you took a normals of that, or you took a different used the different display modes in creative ways, and then you're in Photoshop and you're able to kind of pick and choose what information to highlight. And then once you start using gradient maps or different kinds of informational like uh, detailing, the drawing really comes to life in like a pretty fast way. And I think that what's important just to note is like to like think about the actual process of drawing, to think about how you can have that work for you instead of having it work against you. Um, so yeah, I think that's about it for this tutorial. If you guys have questions, just I'm like very open, and you can just message me. I'll put like my contact information in the folder. Okay. Okay. Talk soon.